Commissioner, thank you very much for joining us here today. Obviously, we want to talk some transportation issues, starting with I-11. That was a huge day, it's going to be a game changer for two states, a lot of cars. You emceed the event. What a great day.
No question. Historic event in that Senator Joe Hardy, representing the great city of Boulder City, talked to me before the event and said he had first heard of the plan in 98 or 99, and then it certainly got momentum. The biggest thing was when Congress designated the corridor as an interstate. And as we heard from many of the speakers, Las Vegas and Phoenix are the two largest metropolitan areas that do not have any interstate connectivity. So when it was designated, then both Arizona and Nevada geared up as far as how we could best go about it. Now the critical part in Nevada was our ability to take people from the dam heading into town and go around Boulder City, because it's always been a traffic nightmare, especially during the busy time of the year. Has had a tremendous safety impact on Boulder City. So that was where the focus was. And that stretch of I-11 now complete is literally the first real tangible piece of I-11, which is why, again, it's historic. As we stated at the event, it may take 20 years, maybe longer, to go from the Mexican border to the Canadian border on the I-11 corridor. But the fact that we have opened up our I-11 segment is where it all begins. Everything starts in Boulder City, and ideally Arizona will get their piece done. And we're right now looking how we get I-11 designated through the valley. There's 2 or 3 options they're looking at. And then when you get out into the northwest, past the Paiute Reservation, then certainly they'll take a corridor up through Reno and ultimately out of the state. So a big event, wonderful speakers. The entire delegation was there. Had a lot of state legislators, community leaders, past electeds that have been involved in the decision. The Chamber of Commerce, Mary Beth Sewall spoke. But it was significant because it highlighted the collaboration between not only the RTC, but the Department of Transportation and the federal delegation. That kind of collaboration results in a project like that.
And what was interesting, there were actually 2 projects, one built by NDOT and then one built by the RTC of Southern Nevada.
Yeah. It was FRI, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, enabled us. We have an infrastructure pot of money now that will enable us to really accelerate the needed infrastructure, road and highway infrastructure in the valley. But for the fact that fuel revenue indexing money became available, we would not have been able to accomplish that in the time period that it was done.
Commissioner, talk a little bit about some of the FRI projects in your district, District C. I know there's some improvements around Lone Mountain as it connects to the 215 in and around those areas.
Very much so. It's interesting, when we first got enabling legislation to do a test FRI, and the County Commission approved it, there were commitments made, not only by the Clark County Commission, but the RTC, to the community that if you enable us to raise the gas tax, we will dedicate that money to specific projects. And the success of the FRI2, the ballot initiative that passed overwhelmingly, was because of the commitment we made and the projects that we completed. We recently broke ground on the Lone Mountain from the Beltway all the way east to the 95. That was the first project of the FRI2 money, and we have a report card on the FRI1, and the RTC and the community and our member agencies deserve an A, because what we promised 3 years ago, we delivered on. And now we enter the phase 2 project. But Lone Mountain, critically important. The Beltway from Alexander around to Wallapai is about 30 days away from being totally complete. New interchange at Lone Mountain on the Beltway, new interchange at Ann Road, an overpass at Centennial, which is going to do wonderful things for the Centennial High School, alleviate some of their traffic congestion. So FRI has been a game changer in that the investment we can make in infrastructure now, we've never had the ability at to this degree any time in our past. You know, the Commissioner Bruce Woodbury, the father of the RTC, had the question 10 passed, which enabled us to do a lot of things, especially the Beltway, accelerate the Beltway. But this FRI money gives us a 10 to 15 year, possibly longer window. And the important thing that people need to understand is the investment in infrastructure is not only to make sure our roads and our highways are safer, more efficient, get people where they're going a lot quicker, but it's an investment in our economy, the ability to create jobs. Thousands of jobs have been created through FRI money, and the response has been wonderful. We've put a lot of companies back into work that coming out of the recession, they needed this kind of opportunity to get the doors open and get moving. We've seen a couple of the companies start to grow their employee base, and that's all good news. And it comes down to the fact that the community as a whole supported FRI. And I strongly believe that that support came from us fulfilling the commitment that we gave on the initial FRI-1 money.
Commissioner, let's talk a little bit about Maryland Parkway. There's been many studies there. You've surveyed residents, business owners, community members. What is happening on Maryland Parkway? What would you like to see happen to improve that
Maryland
arterial?
Parkway, first off, was chosen because it's certainly one of our busiest north-south routes on the RTC fixed route system. This pilot program, or the study that was the pilot study, took it from the downtown area, UMC Medical District, all the way up Maryland Parkway through the university, ultimately to McCarran Airport. And the importance of picking that corridor is because it also serves as almost the backbone of all the other routes east-west. They all connect in or through Maryland Parkway. And what we certainly looked at is what are the next generation options? Is it heavy rail? Is it light rail? Is it BRT, which we've seen successful down in the downtown area? Is it just expanding the roadway and increase our bus service? That was what the study looked at, is what are the best options? And they certainly came down to a light rail and a BRT option. The advisory committee recommended light rail. A lot of the justification was light rail is more permanent. That in turn hopefully will bring business investment down there, the redevelopment of the whole corridor. But it's also a chance to see what a next-gen transportation system is going to do. Does it increase ridership? Does it increase efficiency? Does it reduce congestion? All these things are going to come to fruition as far as knowing what's next in the overall transportation network.
We look forward to seeing what continues on there. Let's talk a little bit about mass transit, specifically RTC. Obviously, it was a win for the Vegas Golden Knights games that they had dedicated buses, and I'm sure that little stadium being built there, shuttling 65,000 Raiders fans, are going to rely much more on mass transit, and that is going to be a big part of the transportation picture.
It was amazing that what started out as, hey, why don't we try this, turned out originally we were going to do up at Centennial Hills, a service from that area directly to the stadium. Then I picked a southern point just to see if we could have people come park in our lots and ride the bus into the games. Well, that expanded quickly because the response was overwhelming. And it was another indication that we have to remain creative. The old way of doing things, getting in your car, driving, trying to find a parking spot, especially down in that strip corridor, that was a great foreshadowing of what I think will happen with the Raiders Stadium and other transportation. That's a piece of it, the express services from the RTC, but now you introduce whatever we select on Maryland Parkway, the impact of Lyft and Uber, the autonomous vehicles. There's talk about doing something different on the strip. We don't know what that is, but looking at ways and the technologies that are going to, again, reduce congestion and increase efficiencies. And it's not a selection. It's not a light rail or a BRT or an express route. It's multimodal. There's going to be a lot of pieces of this puzzle. For instance, the monorail, which Ideally, people wanted to go down the strip to downtown. Ultimately, they had to go back of the house on a lot of the properties to the convention center. But now they're talking extending from MGM to Mandalay Bay. And what does that do? Is that going to increase ridership as far as our everyday passengers? Probably not. But what it does do is create a convention spur where you start at Mandalay, you go to MGM. The Sands is evaluating putting a stop there at their Sands Expo. Wynn's building a larger convention center down to our convention, the big convention center. That right there alone has tremendous value to make it a lot easier for our conventioneers when they come to town. They have a host of options now as far as where they stay, and they can get to any convention at just about any convention space. And that's another piece of the overall puzzle that we're putting together to meet the demand, the transportation demands over the next generation.
Always great catching up with you and getting your view on transportation. Thank you, Commissioner.
It's great. Thank you, Randy.